Marketing is complex, and that might be why a lot of tech company CEOs and founders don't focus on marketing. They just can't afford to hire 14 people to build this world-class marketing capability. So they do the only thing they know how, which is to build sales teams. So they raise a lot of money and they spend a lot of that money just building sales teams and just playing the numbers game.
Welcome to another amazing episode of the Tech Business Roundtable podcast, brought to you by Equa.tech, the leader in digital marketing for tech companies. We want to first take a moment to thank you for sharing this podcast with your friends and on social media and helping us grow week after week. Meet our host of today's TBR episode, Ryan Davies. Ryan is the Director of Marketing of Equa.tech and is a dynamic leader in driving business transformation through technology. Over to you, Ryan.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show. This is a podcast show dedicated to shining a spotlight on tech innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, and the compelling narratives behind the movements they've established. I'm your host, Ryan Davies, and I'm hosting today's discussion, Are Your Potential Clients Calling You? Inbound Marketing Secrets Explained, featuring our esteemed guest, Naren and Ryan. Naren, thank you so much for joining us here today.
I'm super excited to be here, Ryan. I think we're going to have fun today. We're going to talk about some interesting things and just hopefully add a lot of value to our listeners today.
I think so too. I mean, this is an area, it's you're a visionary leader and a serial entrepreneur. You've really transformed the digital landscape and been a guiding force for businesses that are seeking online success. Naren's the CEO of Equa.com and stands really at the forefront of innovation, wielding his expertise to empower business founders with cutting-edge solutions. And, I know you've not only shaped the trajectory of your own enterprises, but you've become a sought-after speaker. You shared your insights on stages around the globe. And how amazing is it we get the privilege today to tap into that wealth of knowledge and discuss, how you can really help transform the marketing for business founders and help get those all important inbound callers and inbound leads coming into them, right? So I'd love to kind of just sort of kick it off with, a question around that, talking about the goal of marketing, right? Convincing people to buy your product, or you can help people want your product. So what are the problems that you see, around marketing when an entire business is based off someone having to go out and convince people to buy their product?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been running tech businesses for the last, 16, 17 years. And we have 250 people in the different businesses that I'm involved in. And I have also a lot of colleagues. So I've been part of tech organizations, communities, so to speak. And I've known CEOs and founders who took businesses from zero to, $1 billion plus exits. And one of the things I notice is the number one problem they have is the cost of acquiring a customer. So if they are not, if they don't have an inbound machine to send them new customers, customer is really, really, really high, because you have to hire an army of salespeople, and they're going to be calling on people who are not interested in the product. So for every 10 calls you make, you might get one person. So it's a big, numbers game. So like, for example, my cost of acquisition, I'll share my case study, is sometimes, 20% of acquiring a customer for my peers. So, I mean, when you have that kind of an advantage, when your cost of acquiring a new customer is a fraction of what everybody else is spending, now you can take that extra money and, make your product better, keep your clients longer, innovate, do other things. So I think that's the, number one benefit of, having an inbound marketing machine, because you don't have to convince people to buy your product. Rather, they are telling you, please sell me your product. Can I learn more? I'm interested. How can I get started? So the entire conversation is different. I know, Ryan, you have first-hand experience because you're part of, some of the things that we do with both Equa.com and Equa.tech. And, it's so much different, the conversations you have when the customers are calling you and they're booking an appointment with you and wanting to talk to you versus, when we are going after them.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of that battle before, where it's, outbound cold calling, grinding to try. It is truly a grind, and then you're convincing, and you have to sell, and the trust level's different. The authority that you hold is very different, and I'd love to let's drill down a little bit more with Equa.com, right? So you've got an amazing, again, a digital marketing, a tech firm that really helps hundreds of healthcare practices with their marketing, but nobody's been called on. Not a single one of them is a cold call. They come to you, right? So what's been the tools and what's been your strategy to really, again, like you said, lower that cost to as low as 20% of what other people are doing in the industry?
Absolutely. So some background, Equa.com is a marketing company that focuses on helping healthcare practices. So let's say dermatology practices, dental practices, get new patients. So we run their entire marketing for them. And like most marketing companies that go after the healthcare space, we did not, spend money on booths. We did not spend money on ads. We did not have a massive sales team. Literally, even with 200, total employee count, only 2 of those 200 are in sales. The other 198 are in other areas but sales. So how did we build this large company with 2 salespeople? And the way we did it is because, like you said, people are calling us. So the good news is, because we are a marketing company, we started thinking about our own marketing very seriously. And what we realized is marketing is, simple. One is, people who have a need have to be able to find you. And then once they find you, you have to convince them that you are the right choice for them. That's it. Of course, the second part, convincing, you could argue is somewhat sales. But the first part, which is helping people who have a need that you can solve, finding you, that's marketing. Unfortunately, like if I look at the tech landscape, most companies are extremely weak with marketing, especially companies that are, doing less than, 20, 30 million. They don't even invest in it. And even when they do invest in it, they don't have the scale and the breadth to do it properly. I mean, like, for example, like I said, of the 250 people we have, more than 225 are marketing people. So marketing is no longer simple where you have one master of everything doing it all, but rather you have different teams who are experts and specialists in various parts of marketing, and then you bring it all together. So you literally, now in our environment, we have 14 teams. So marketing is complex, and that might be why a lot of tech company CEOs and founders don't focus on marketing. They just can't afford to hire 14 people to build this world-class marketing capability. So they do the only thing they know how, which is to build sales teams. So they raise a lot of money, and they spend a lot of that money just building sales teams and just playing the numbers game. So the way Equa.com did it is, of course, with its own marketing, is, we built our own podcast. So we have a couple of podcasts, and they are like the wider end of the mouth of the funnel. So we made it useful to people. So our clients are practice owners. So we built a podcast specifically for dental practice owners. So those dental practice owners would come and listen to our podcast. And when they listen to the podcast, they are getting to know us. They are getting to know that we exist, what we do, and we have literally tens of thousands of people who know who we are and are familiar with us because our podcasts are very popular. So that's where it starts. So we start with this podcast. That's an amazing way to start getting your potential customers to know you and start liking you. Because, how can somebody build a relationship or buy from you when they don't even know you? And step 2, like you, right? Like, we don't do business with people we don't like. So marketing does all of that. They help people who have a need that you can solve, know you, and then, of course, start liking you.
I mean, just an amazing way of looking at it. And, you talked about the difference between, building this sales team first around marketing. And then, when you do it the way you've done it, the closing ratio is like exponentially higher. It's a lot easier. The trust is inherently built into that. And that comes from building, that inbound marketing engine that you had discussed. And, that's the title of our topic today, is these inbound marketing secrets explained. So maybe I'll get you to dive into that a little bit more, how a listener of this podcast and like I can really build that inbound marketing machine that you had discussed.
Absolutely. So I think you have to start, I mean, like we alluded to earlier, the number one reason to do it is your cost of acquisition will drop to a fraction of what it used to be. But like anything worth doing, it takes vision, it takes a new way of thinking and a new perspective. So I recommend you start your own podcast, you start your own community, where Equa.com did not just stop at podcasts. We went further. We built our own academies. We built our own conferences. We do regular webinars. We do lots and lots of educational events. So you really become, think of it, it's almost like, look at the music business, right? In the old days, the artist made money by selling CDs, $10 a CD. Now all the music is free, as much music as you want. They don't make a lot of money from the music itself. But then, who's going on this big tour right now?
Taylor Swift on her.
Taylor Swift, exactly.
Yeah.
She's worth $1.1 billion, and I think a single ticket costs hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go see her. And there are tens of thousands of people who want to go see her in every town she goes to.
Yeah.
Do the math, right? She's making millions a night. Probably like 50 plus million a night in a single day, right? It's just mind-blowing numbers. So still she's making money, just the way she makes money is different. So think of your marketing as education that you are kind of sponsoring or you are facilitating. That doesn't directly pay you, meaning they're not paying you for listening to your education, but the amount of money you make on the back end is massive, because otherwise you would have spent it on your large sales team, where your cost of acquisition is 5 to 10 times more than what it would be if you had this, very powerful marketing machine.
Yeah, I think that, when we're talking about, like you said with Taylor Swift and how you did the same thing, right? She's got the concert that went to now the Eras tour in the movie theaters that's now down to going to on demand, and then it's going to go to streaming. As you mentioned, that's kind of that exponential growth of what a podcast can do, and that it reaches a larger audience, it becomes more accessible, and people are seeing it in different ways. You're really building community and thought leadership for what you're doing into an industry that, there's nearly 500 million podcast listeners globally this year. It's going to pass 500 million listeners next year. So it's such a great place to be that's probably being a little bit underutilized. But maybe, let's talk about more specifics around that, about like maybe a client that is using podcast marketing that of one of your clients and how they're so successful doing it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the backstory behind Equa.tech. Remember, I talked about Equa.com, which is a marketing company for practices. Equa.tech is the marketing company for tech companies. So it's all about like a done-for-you service that helps tech companies build this inbound marketing engine without hiring a VP of sales, with VP of marketing, without hiring marketing experts. So it's a done-for-you service. So let me kind of talk about a client who is doing extremely well and how they are doing it. For confidentiality reasons, I'm not going to mention names on a podcast that's getting distributed to tens of thousands of people, but I'll just tell you the story. So this is one of the largest business in tax and accounting and so forth in a certain region. They do things differently. They charge a subscription fee, and they grew as much as they can based on word of mouth and so forth. And now they need to go to the next level. So the problem they came to us is, we want to keep our cost of acquisition low. When it's referrals and word of mouth, it's low, but we want to keep it as low, but we want to grow 30, 40% on an already huge number. So that was the problem they had. So we said, okay, let's build a podcast. This particular company caters to certain types of business owners, people in tech, for example. So, okay, let's figure out how do we build a podcast that people in tech want to listen to? Let's figure out how do we build a podcast that people in tech want to share? So, we built a podcast. It's every, and that podcast is all about, celebrating other tech founders and CEOs. So the host of the show would interview amazing CEOs, amazing founders, even like people who run venture capital firms, possibly people who run banks, financial institutions, different types of companies. And the idea is by helping your customers learn from these guests who are also customers, you are now building a community. You are right now becoming useful to your customer base, right? Everyone in tech now knows of this particular company because they have listened to the podcast. How do they get to the podcast? Maybe their buddy did a podcast, or maybe somebody they look up to in a particular industry did a podcast, and that podcast is shared virally on LinkedIn and X and various platforms, and they saw a short clip, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I want to listen to the whole podcast," and like they're like, I love this podcast. Let me subscribe to it because I learned so much from it, and I can do it when I'm driving, or I can do it during my workout, right? So it's an amazing way to really really start building your online inbound marketing engine at a really affordable cost. I mean, it's literally like less than like 1/4 of what you would pay a decent marketing person a month, and it's all done for you. So you don't have to hire a video person, you don't have to hire a graphics person, you don't have to hire a podcast marketing expert, you don't have to have any of these people. It's all like done for you. So it's a brilliant thing, and I didn't want to do this business, but like a lot of my colleagues are in tech, and they're like, "We suck at marketing, and you run a marketing company for 20 years, and why aren't you helping us?" So that's kind of how the whole thing got started.
It's amazing. Yeah. And like you said, it's a great way to make their clients look great, and their thought leaders through the entire, through the whole process. And you're really speaking to such a defined audience, right? Like, you're talking to people and being able to put this out there to listeners that are looking for this exact information, this exact leadership, and that style. So every hit Hollywood movie, has a formula. And I know in other podcasts, other things I've listened to you and other speeches you've done, you've kind of talked about, this Hollywood formula magic and how that sort of applies to marketing. So maybe you could talk about that, about, what makes the Hollywood formula, what makes them hits, and how that kind of applies in this space.
Oh, that's a great question. So, yeah, every successful Hollywood movie has a simple formula. Always there's a hero, right? Think of, Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker, he's the hero. There's a villain, and of course, the villain is Darth Vader, right? Every successful movie will have a villain. And then there is a guide, that is Yoda, right? This godly figure, or however you want to call it, who's just behind the scenes and who's just helping you through this. And then what happens is the entire movie is the hero's journey. The hero loses, is not only fighting the external villain, he's also finding an internal villain, which is the doubt, the self-doubt. Can I do this? Am I good enough? All these fears and thoughts we all have. And then in that hero's journey, he struggles and struggles against the villain, the internal and the external villain. He almost loses, and then he slightly wins, and he almost loses, slightly wins, and we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and eventually the hero wins. And that's the story that all of us identify with. And that's why every successful movie has the same formula. Take the top 10 all-time highest grossing movies, the same formula. Like, it's just the same thing, right? Because think about it. What's happening is when we are sitting in that movie theater and watching that movie, we identify ourselves with Luke. We are the Luke. We are the ones with all these doubts. We are the ones struggling. We are the ones, failing and failing and failing, and then finally succeeding. So because we can identify ourselves with it, we love that movie, and we watch it again and again and tell our friends about it, and we just can't stop watching it. So everyone who's in Hollywood, from Steven Spielberg, who's successful, figured out that storyline and that components of the story, the villain, the hero, the guide, and then they put it all together and they create this massively successful movies. Now, you can take that same concept and apply it to marketing, right? Because if you think about it, the mistake that businesses make when they do marketing is they think they are the hero. They are not. They are the guide. They're not the hero, and they're not the villain. They are the guide. The hero is the customer, right? So another company that does this amazingly well is Nike, right? What did Nike do back in the 80s? I'm sure many of you have seen the movie about how they signed Michael Jordan that came out recently. They realized they can sell sneakers to African-American kids, and they just needed a hero that these kids would look up to. They found this skinny kid who was not proven, like nobody was even thinking of, called Michael Jordan, who was just starting out, but he had this will to win. He would do anything to win. And they realized by piggybacking on his story, like making him the hero and celebrating him, they can sell a lot of sneakers, right? So They did crazy things that were unheard of in marketing. They didn't think of ads or anything. They didn't have any money. They were a company that was doing $1 billion in revenue. If you watch that movie, when they signed Michael Jordan, and they just, you know, they just celebrated him. They made it. Even the Air Jordans were like controversial. It was red because they wanted to stand out and everybody to notice. But every time you wore red, you would get fined. So they're like, of course, every time you get fined, it gets written about in newspapers, right? Of course, $40,000, whatever fine back then, it was a lot of money, but it was still a lot cheaper than, buying coverage in every newspaper and every TV in every town because they're doing something crazy, right? And every time he scored, they celebrated it. They made a big deal. And of course, every kid wanted to be like Michael. So how do you be like Michael? You buy an Air Jordan. So they would work 6 months, save up the money and buy that Air Jordan. Of course, now Air Jordans are a massive brand. I think they expected to do 5 million in sales, but they ended up doing, if I'm not mistaken, like 200 million or some crazy, 140 million, crazy number in the year one.
Mhm.
It just blew everything away. It's just totally different marketing, right? So the goal is to celebrate someone like the customer, in this case, Michael Jordan, and make him a hero. And you be the one that who's like the guide or who's kind of standing on the side. Even if you think about their commercial, right? They never talked about their shoes. They never talked about what's in the shoes. They never talked about the tech, nothing. It's all about celebrating Michael Jordan. And the more people identified with Michael Jordan, the more Air Jordans just sold out. That's all they needed to do. Just find someone who the customer wants to be like and celebrate that person. So podcast marketing is a great place to do that. And I think I already shared this example of this one client we are working with. That's exactly what they're doing. They're celebrating their customers. And also because the world we live in, TikTok, Instagram, X, you name it, these things are getting shared like crazy. The videos, the content, they all get shared, a lot. And the more they get shared, the more people, are curious about this company that is part of that journey in helping that particular business go from 0 to 20 million or 10 million to 30 million, whatever the number is. And they're like, I want to be like Mike, so I'm going to also sign up with the same firm that they are using. So that's the entire psychology behind it. Of course, there's more to it. There'll be webinars and events and educational content and so forth, teaching people about the topics you are the expert in. But that comes later once they already like you and trust you.
Yeah, I think unbelievable analogy. I mean, even go back to thinking about that movie about when they needed to market to Michael Jordan. Who did they go to? They went to his parents, and they made him look like a hero to them, right? That same story of being able to get that captured audience, get them on board. And now, I mean, the Jordan brand is a machine that's, maybe Tiger Woods slightly rivals it back in the day. I don't think anything rivals it at all, even close, right? And it was all because of that style of, like you said, that guerrilla marketing, knowing the audience, getting a captive audience and doing it the right way. I think podcast marketing really does an amazing job of that, right? And I think there's a big difference between, creating a podcast and, recording and editing and throwing it up online and podcast marketing. And I think the benefits of that, there's many, right? Between that, you've already kind of touched a little bit on that content machine that happens and the promotional powerhouse and monetization of it. But maybe you can drill down a little bit further on those pieces around exactly, those big benefits that podcast marketing brings to the table.
Absolutely. And just touching on Phil Knight, I was just Googling Phil Knight's net worth, right? He's worth $42.6 billion, right? $42.6 billion. And all of this started after they signed Michael Jordan. And even today, Michael Jordan alone makes, that company, I think, $10 billion in revenue. It's crazy, or 5 billion. I don't know the exact number, but tons of money, like an ungodly amount of money. So back when they signed Michael Jordan, Phil Knight's net worth probably was like, I don't know, maybe they were worth, $300-400 million company. Maybe he was worth 100 million. So his net worth went up 400 times since they signed Michael Jordan. This is what I mean. This is not about getting an extra point, getting extra 2 points. This is changing the game, changing your business in a way that you can't even imagine. But what we try to do is how do we help our clients do that at an affordable fee, and that's kind of what Equa.tech is. But coming back to your question, so your question is around Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, just around like the other benefits of that podcast marketing brings to the table, right? Like when you're podcasting, it's a pretty simple concept, hey,
Yeah.
record and do that. But as you mentioned, there's certain magic that goes into creating content and how to post that and promote it and monetize it that really changes the game from podcasting to podcast marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way other benefits are, like, for example, this particular client we are working with, we create shorts. So for example, he interviews this amazing CEO who did this unbelievable thing, and there's two or three things he said that are like, wow, amazing. So we create a short, we share it on X, we share it on LinkedIn, we share it on YouTube, and it goes viral because it's so compelling, and other entrepreneurs see it and the algorithms pick it up, and before you know it, the numbers go from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands, right? So all of a sudden, you are creating a way to create content that is shareable, that's viral. So that's a massive benefit. Most of our information is coming from LinkedIn, it's coming from YouTube, it's coming from X. It's not coming from the traditional media. It's not coming from salespeople calling and telling us stuff. It's not even coming from ads, because most of us are so desensitized to ads. So this is an amazing way to get in front of your potential customers. And remember, who else is going to watch that CEO? It's a fellow CEO who's your customer, right? Or for example, let me use another example. So let's say you are running a company that sells something to IT shops in hospitals, right? I'm making it up, right? So of course you run a podcast that people who work in IT in healthcare settings want to listen to. All of a sudden, you bring in the people who are like them and you celebrate them, talk to them. What are they doing? Because now they are wanting to learn from what this other guy who's running a IT shop at a 500-person hospital doing, that I can learn from, or vice versa, right? So you make them heroes. So you can build a community around anything. Think of your podcast like having your own TV station. In the old days, you needed like 10, 20, 30, $40 million to open up a TV station. Now you can do it, or in the case of Equata Tech, with the help of Equata Tech, all done for you at literally like the cost of, less than 1/4 of a decent marketing person.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important to be able. Again, we're talking about ROI when we're talking about sales and revenue. That's what we want to look at, right? Is how to do that, and just I love that analogy and that comment around the fact of you're building a community, you're building strength, you're strengthening those partnerships and relationships too with your current clients, and to that effect, right? Like if you've got these really strong relationships, you're bringing guests, you're spotlighting them, you're bringing them new clients, they're not going anywhere. You've locked them in too, right? So you've really, your retention goes up, your ability to attract new clients goes up. It's really, a self-fulfilling prophecy almost when you do this and you do it right. And so for our listeners of the episode, they say maybe this is for me now, right? Like I should be doing this podcast. I really want to get more internal or inbound marketing happening. My cost of acquiring a customer is just way too high right now. Where do they start, Naren? What's the strategy for them?
Yeah, so we have a surprise gift for them. So we would gift what we call a marketing strategy meeting. And the way they would get this gift is by going to techbusinessroundtable.com/MSM, techbusinessroundtable.com/MSM. And so what this is like, prior to the meeting, Equador Tech team would research the client, figure out what business they are in, and really help you come up with a strategy, almost like a blueprint. What kind of an inbound marketing machine can you build? What would it look like? What are the components of it? What are the keys to success? And then also give you a roadmap. So in 12 months, this is what you need to do to go from zero to having a decent marketing engine that's starting to bring in a serious new number of new clients for you. So instead of you just calling on strangers, they are calling you. They already know you. They already like you. They already trust you. So it's a game changer. So I mean, it's a $1,400 value. You meet with people who are like marketing gods when you do this meeting, and you learn a ton. So get that marketing plan. And then, of course, whether you work with Equador Tech or not, that's your decision. But at least now you know what you need to do to build your own inbound marketing engine. Once again, that link is techbusinessroundtable.com/MSM.
And that's exactly it, right? We want to talk, and this is exactly what this is about, is really learning how to harness that superpowers of podcasting, And I know that MSM is going to provide those actionable tactics for how to do it, to strategize it, to highlight the potentials, to go through it, and really, become one of those. It's a thing that they're all doing it right now. Google, Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, Salesforce, Adobe, Square, Atlassian. It doesn't matter. They're all on board with podcast marketing, and it's now so achievable for smaller businesses, for tech founders to really build their audience as well. So I would definitely challenge everybody to take action and get started there, as well as, for our listeners of the podcast, please, share with us as well some of the goals, ask questions, things like that about what might be a great episode for future or to take part. But I would definitely say the first step, is really that, visiting techbusinessroundtable.com/MSM and take advantage of building that forward. So, with that, Naren, I want to give you a chance here to kind of, future crystal ball, looking ahead, maybe a little bit about where you see this industry going, and anything else to be able to reach out and get in contact with you for some more information.
Absolutely. I think what has happened lately with interest rates going up and money drying up for tech companies, I think is a blessing in disguise, because when I started my companies, I didn't have any money. I wanted to, get some money, and my banker said, "Give me a business plan, and maybe I'll give you a $25,000 loan." And they wanted business plan. They wanted 3 years worth of, financial statements. It was just, I had to pay more money to prepare the things they wanted than what I would get in the 25 grand. So I didn't have a choice but to self-fund my business. And looking back, I think that was a blessing. So I think what happens when you have too much money is you waste it. So one of the reasons I think the cost of acquisition is so high is because I think for a while there was too much money floating around. So see, the thing is, if you are really, really good with money and you're efficient with money, it gives you options, right? Even if you do have too much money, now you can do 10 times more with it, because you know how to make a little bit of money go a lot further. So I think building this inbound marketing capability, where you're not dependent on your sales team or a large sales team. Of course you need salespeople, but you don't need so many of them. You don't need to depend on advertising. You don't need to depend on third parties. Rather, you control your destiny with a powerful inbound marketing strategy. So I think you ought to, you deserve to, figure this stuff out, at least know what it is. And instead of saying, well, it's too hard, it can't be done, try to explore it and see where it takes you. You might be surprised. That's how I went from zero with no funding, no nothing, to, running multiple companies with 250 people. A lot of times, what you learn the hard way might be a blessing in disguise.
Well said. I think that's a great place to kind of leave it off for our audience, and for them to be excited about, that potential sales boost that's there without that massive overhead, without needing to mobilize that sales team, to take advantage of all the things you already do so incredibly well and build these strong relationships with your clients, and to get those future people to, to pick up the phone, to click and call, to email, and to get in touch with you. So I think that's a wonderful place for us to leave off here. Again, take advantage of that gift from Naren, techbusinessroundtable.com/MSM, and get yourself started. This is an exciting space to be in. Tap into those 500 million people that are going to be listening to podcasts, and really take yourself to a new level from the marketing perspective. And with that, I really want to thank Naren for this incredible podcast episode. Are your potential clients calling you? Inbound marketing secrets explained. So much to take away here. Thank you so much, Naren, for being here and for enlightening our listeners today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really had fun, and hopefully, if you find this valuable, definitely take advantage of that marketing strategy meeting, and and see where your marketing can go. Have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And I want to thank our listeners as well. We can't do what we do without you. So until we meet again with another amazing TBR episode, I'm your host, Ryan Davies. Take care and stay curious out there.
Thank you, Ryan, for this amazing episode. Thank you for joining us on the Tech Business Roundtable podcast. We hope our discussions have sparked new ideas, expanded your knowledge, and empowered you on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and write us a positive review. Thank you for listening to the Tech Business Roundtable podcast show.